Good morning, good morning, good morning, everybody. My name is Jay Edgar, and this is Across the Board, episode number 4. And we've got ourselves a great panel coming up here today. We've got something great to talk about here today. Something I'm very interested in, something I'm very interested to see what my co-hosts of the day think about, because it's going to be an interesting one. My name, of course, is Jay Edgar. This is Across the Board. We're going to talk today about the Great Reset. How's everybody's Saturday doing? Do we see anybody in the live chat here? We've got some people up in the live chat here. We've got Sean B. Planet, Stephen Ignoramus, Might Be Wrong, Sergeant Peterson here, ready to go here. We'll be catching up with the live chat here mostly towards the end, but I'll pick some things in and out of there as we go along here. And we will be talking about the latest conspiracy to surround the Biden presidency. Thank you, everybody, for coming in here, joining us today, and I'll introduce the co-hosts as we go. So, I've been hearing about this for a little while. I actually got asked on Contemporary in the live chat to take some time and do a live stream talking about this, about the Great Reset, because it's something that's going to be very interesting to see, and to see if they can actually pull it off, if this is actually something to do. I had not heard about this until, just a few weeks ago, when Biden got through and won the presidency, which we still haven't decided whether or not he's done so or not. And all of a sudden, people started talking about this. When I started going down the rabbit hole, I realized that this is actually something that's been going on for quite a while. Almost since the St. George riots, we've been hearing about the Great Reset, and even before that, they started off with this. So just to set the stage here, before we get started in here, we're going to talk just a bit about where this came from and what was happening up before this. Going back all the way to 2016. Now, towards the end of 2016, most of us were seeing at least some relief in the economy. It wasn't a great relief, but there was some relief going on. We were starting to get a little bit more money in our pockets. Some of the jobs were starting to open up. They weren't great jobs, but some jobs were starting to open up. Some places were starting to hire. Through the depths of the Great Recession, we had nowhere to go but up. And then the election of 2016 happened, and all of a sudden now we're sitting here looking at great economic growth everywhere that we go. Even before the inauguration, Donald Trump was going through and making deals with companies like Ford, saying that if they build a factory in Mexico, he was going to tariff them out the ass for everything. And Carrier, another one where he said, you know what, if you go across overseas or if you go down to Mexico, expect to pay more in tariffs than you ever paid in your life. Saying various things like that. And people mocked him for it, of course, saying that he was trying to be president before he was president, which he was, absolutely was, and Joe Biden's doing the same right now. But on the America First agenda that Donald Trump was able to put forward, in spite of all the rest of his problems and the fact that he was spending us into oblivion as he went, he gave us 3 years of probably one of the best economies I've seen in my life. That, of course, going along with the fact that under the Reagan economy, I was way too young to know what was even going on. I mean, under the Reagan economy, I was busy trying to learn how to use a spoon, to give you an idea how old I was and where I had seen an economy like that before. So, now we're sitting here with 3 years of great economy going through. The Dow Jones is inching its way closer and closer to 30,000, which we just hit not that long ago once again. We keep inching our way forward and forward and forward, just about to 30,000. Donald Trump looks like he's getting ready to go and start cakewalking to re-election. And that's what people, even the griftiest of grifters out there, like the people over at the Daily Wire, we're out there ready to say, Trump is going to cakewalk in. He's going to become the next president. He's going to be easy about this. It's going to be the easiest thing he's ever done. And then the COVID hit. And all of a sudden, in just a couple weeks' time, we were going from charging ahead, people buying homes at record rates, home prices going up, skyrocketing at record rates, people making more and more money because they were threatening to leave because everybody else was paying more and more money because nobody could fill those 7 million jobs that they had. And all of a sudden we're sitting here in an economic crash. People were talking right from the beginning, even before the lockdowns. When they were just talking about the lockdowns, the first thing we were hearing is what's going to happen with rent. Are people going to get evicted? I actually put out a Snapchat when this first happened and said, hey, who's homeless today on the first of the month after they started locking things down, because I knew that this was going to start affecting people. Now, of course, we saw moratoriums on evictions, moratoriums on foreclosures, and moratoriums on everything else. But the fact of the matter remained that even as people were going through, as they were getting down, as they were coming down to the last dollars, and as people were starting to go back to work, and some of these measures were expiring on the federal level and on some of the state levels, people knew that if they had gone for 6 months without paying their rent, at some point they were going to have to come back and pay all of that money, that back rent, back out, that back rent, that back electricity, sometimes those back phone bills. They were going to have to pay all of that money back, bringing us up into another financial crisis. Now, as the vaccine got announced, and of course, as Joe Biden is starting to look like he's going to be the president-elect, the Dow has come back to 30,000. The Dow is not the economy, and I understand that, and I accept that. But the Dow is a projection of what people who want to make a whole bunch of money in the stock market think the economy is going to do. So, given the numbers that we're seeing from the Dow, they think that the economy is going to come roaring back to the point that it was and above, coming up in the very, very near future. However, we keep hearing talks about this great reset. So I want to read just a couple of things that I found on the Great Reset here. Of course, hoping that my panelists can be the ones who educate me on this. But I want to read just a couple things. First off, we'll talk from Wikipedia here, because if it's good enough for term papers, then it's good enough for me. I mean, that's the way that we look at this here. The Great Reset is a proposal by the World Economic Forum to rebuild the economy sustainably following the COVID-19 pandemic. It was unveiled in May of 2020 by the United Kingdom's Prince Charles and WEF Director Klaus Schwab. It seems to improve capitalism by making investments more geared towards mutual progress and focusing more on environmental initiatives. It has been criticized for using the pandemic to implement a risky experiment, and a petition to stop it gained 80,000 signatures in under 72 hours. And it's important to see the way that Wikipedia is framing it. First off, Wikipedia is horribly leftist, and they'll lock it out if too many right-wingers come out and try to change something in the article. But they are pointing out the fact, according to this article at least, that it seeks to improve capitalism. So we're hearing a lot about the fact that it's going to open up unfettered socialism, and a couple of the other articles that I have up at the top of the screen are saying just that this is going to open us up to unfettered socialism. But the way that they're trying to sell it to the people, and to the people who watch mainstream sources and use Wikipedia for their term papers to copy and paste to, is the fact that this is going to be an improvement on capitalism. So, with that in mind, we do take some time and look at some of the other things that go along with this. The Hill pointed out this is an article from all the way back in June, introducing the Great Reset, world leaders' radical plan to transform the economy. For decades, progressives have attempted to use climate change to justify liberal policy changes, but their latest attempt, a new proposal called the Great Reset, is the most ambitious and radical plan the world has seen in more than a generation. And this does go right on the fact that, even before the economy started to fail and falter, and people started to blame the president for the fact that the economy was failing and faltering, never mind the fact that places like South Dakota were staying open, even back at the beginning when they were starting to blame the president for this, before that they were talking about that climate was going to be the thing that ended the world economy, and they needed to use the Green New Deal to boost the world economy. Now, could the two be interrelated? That's something that I do want to ask my panelists when we get to that point. But this has been something that's been in the works for a long time. We could even attribute this somewhat back to Agendas 21 and 30, if we really want to think back to the beginning of this. Klaus Schwab adds to the Hill a quote here: "Every country from the United States to China must participate, and every industry from oil and gas to tech must be transformed," wrote Klaus Schwab, the founder and executive chairman of the World Economic Forum, in an article published on WEF's website. In short, we need a great reset of capitalism. Now, of course, when you think about a reset, you think about setting everybody back to equal equality of opportunity, as so you will. And there are people out there that will swear up and down that we don't have equality of opportunity, and hell, even in the world, we may not have equality of opportunity. But that doesn't go far enough for some of the progressives and some of the people who would go into a World Economic Forum and even a world government like this. The goal seems to be on the progressive side, and these are the people that are talking about this the most right now, of inequality of outcome. And I do think from seeing some of the other readings that I've seen on this, that equality of outcome is going to be one of the key aspects to this, getting everybody back to the same place. Where does it go? Where does it end? I'm not really sure. I've not been able to actually find a clear-cut path into reading about what the Great Reset is without paying a whole bunch of money for the book. And, of course, picking up the book in a week's time and digesting it probably wasn't going to happen with everything else that I've got going on in this. So, hopefully, maybe somebody on the panel has read the book at this point, but we will see what happens with that. So, that's what there's, and this is, what was the date stamp on this? 6/25 of 20. This was right after I got back from Florida with my boy Stephen Ignoramus. So, that's what they're saying off of this. Now, Time just recently put out an article about this, trying to sell this even further. And I know that Stephen Ignoramus was talking about this over on the Daily Ignoramus. A better economy is possible, but we need to reimagine capitalism to do it. Now, capitalism, first off, is not an actual economic policy. Capitalism is basically a propaganda term that the socialists use to describe a free market economy. There is no capitalism. But of course, now with this and the fact that capitalism has been adopted by every ANCAP out there, I don't understand what reimagining capitalism would do. I mean, for the most part, capitalism is get the government out of the way and just let everybody trade what they want to trade, and if somebody gets screwed, it's their own fault and they've got to deal with the consequences. But to read from this, this is by Klaus Schwab himself, so by the author of this. In the immediate months followed the outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic, the world as we knew it was turned upside down. Like most people, I was constrained to observing the situation from inside my home and the World Economic Forum's empty offices, and I relied on video calls to know how others were doing. Since those early moments of the crisis, it has been hard to be optimistic about the prospect of a brighter global future. The only immediate upside, perhaps, was the drop in greenhouse gas emissions, which brought a slight temporary relief to the planet's atmosphere. And of course, we saw that. People weren't commuting as much anymore. A lot of them were telecommuting. A lot of them lost their jobs, but a lot of them were telecommuting. We didn't have to bus kids back and forth to school because that was the first thing we had to do when we thought that this was airborne Ebola, was to stop people from going to school, to gathering anywhere indoors, including you can't go to your favorite restaurant. It shouldn't have come as a surprise that many started to wonder, will governments, businesses, and other influential stakeholders truly change their ways for the better after this, or will we go back to business as usual? Looking at the news headlines about layoffs, bankruptcies, and the many mistakes made in the emergency response to the crisis, anyone may have been inclined to give a pessimistic answer. Indeed, the bad news related to COVID-19 came on top of the enormous economic, environmental, social, and political challenges we were already facing before the pandemic, which I don't know what economic challenges we were going through other than the fact that business leaders in this country, at least, couldn't find enough workers to fill their jobs. With every passing year, these issues, as many people have experienced directly, seem to get worse, not better. It is also true that there are no easy ways out of this vicious cycle, even though the mechanisms to do so lie at our fingertips. Every day we invent new technologies that could make our lives and the planet's health better. Free markets, trade, and competition create so much wealth that in theory they could make everyone better off if there was the will to do so. But that is not the reality we live in today. I can't read. Technological advances often take place in a monopolized economy and are used to prioritize one company's profits over societal progress. The same economic system that created so much prosperity in the golden age of American capitalism in the 1950s and 60s is now creating inequality and climate change. And the same political system that enabled our global progress and democracy after World War II now contributes to societal discord and discontent. Each was well intended but had unintended negative consequences. And this is the same guy that's coming out and he's trying to sell this to you. He's trying to sell you in one Time news article that you want this, that you want a great reset, that you want to fundamentally change the way that the country operates and the way that you do business, whether within your own country or the rest of the world. Now, there have always, as always, been a few dissenters from this, including up to our neighbors in the north over in Canada. From CBC News, the Great Reset reads like globalist plot with some plot holes. Aaron Wary adds this article for us. Pierre Poilievre recently alerted the nation to what he thinks Justin Trudeau is up to. And of course, there's that word think again. They come out and they bring these ideas, but they don't bring the proof. But reading from every single different direction that I've seen from this, I can see where they can come to this particular outcome. Last week, the presumptive finance minister in Aaron O'Toole's government in waiting warned that global financial elites are attempting to re-engineer economies and societies in order to empower elites at the expense of the people. Canadians, he said, must fight back against global elites and their power grab. He invited those who share their concerns to sign a petition calling on the government to protect our freedom and end plans to impose the Great Reset. So even in semi-socialistic Canada, they're looking at this, they're saying, what the hell? And they're pushing back against this. Now, Trudeau being, well, Trudeau, there's really no other explanation for the guy. Seems like he wants to come back and barrel ahead with this, but, I mean, if you look at the multiculturalism of just Justin Trudeau's costumes, you will see why he would want to go out and make a globalist Canada and reach out to every single part of the world to do so. Even his hands were black. I saw the picture. That was nuts. But yes, they're pushing back against him off of this, even up in Canada, where they gladly pay in to their healthcare system so everybody can wait in line for healthcare or come down to the United States to get their emergency surgery. Looking on here from some of the other information that I found from this, from moderndiplomacy.eu, this is coming out of Europe, COVID-19 lockdowns are in lockstep with a Great Reset. In October of 2019, a pandemic simulation exercise called Event 201, a collaborative effort between Johns Hopkins Center for Health Security, World Economic Forum, and Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, which those last two that are up there, putting the World Economic Forum and Bill and Melinda Gates together, that'll send a chill right up your spine, because I don't know about you, but I don't want somebody working on a World Economic Forum that has advocated for a depopulation of the planet. Maybe I'm not like you, but that's not something I want to see. When COVID-19 coincidentally emerged from Wuhan 2 months later, which that's interesting, they went through and they did this simulation, and 2 months later, we've got the commie fucking coup running around the world and destroying economies and destroying people's lives left and right. I mean, I've got a friend who couldn't go and attend her wedding because of some minuscule virus from China that's got a 99.9% survival rate. People put their lives on hold for this shit 2 months after they had the simulation. And you have to wonder what's going on with that. But let's read on. When COVID-19 coincidentally emerged from Wuhan 2 months later, scientists were rushing to generate similar alarmist forecasts using a variety of questionable scientific models. Researchers from the Imperial College London, for instance, approximated death tolls of 500,000 in the UK and 2 million in the US by October of this year. Yeah, we missed the mark by just a little bit. Just a little bit we missed that mark, but that's what they were predicting. I remember that's what they were predicting right from the beginning. And I completely understand why they were predicting something like that. Because We didn't know. I accepted the lockdowns in the beginning because we didn't know. We had no way of knowing. This was a novel virus, and we're due for a pandemic in this world. We really are, and one that's as deadly as the Spanish flu. We're due for one. But this one wasn't it. I'm sorry to tell you. This is not airborne Ebola that liquefies your insides as soon as you breathe in. This is not you go to the testing facility and get a Q-tip jammed up your nose, and all of a sudden the nearest phone to you rings and you hear a voice on the other end of the line whisper, 7 days. That's not what this is. This is a common cold that's a little bit more, what's the word I'm looking for? Infective. That's not the word I'm looking for, but that's the one that'll work for now. But they made this model here, and then all of a sudden, now we're starting to see this. All right, I'm going to read just a little bit here from the National Review, and then we're going to probably get into the panelist part of this. Let me see if I'm still missing one of my panelists, so somebody wants to reach out to Quest and see if he's going to pop in here. That would be awesome of you. The National Review writes, The Great Reset, if only it were just a conspiracy. Writing for The Spectator US, Ben Sixsmith gets to grips with the Great Reset now being proposed by the World Economic Forum, Davos, which I had not heard about that until I started hearing about the Great Reset, which Davos is an interesting thing. I'd like to look a lot more into it than what I started going down the rabbit hole for today, but the fact that we even have a World Economic Forum kind of makes me just a little bit nervous, and I do have to wonder what this is going to do for the third world. But we will see what happens with that. And yes, despite a name that sounds as if it were conjured up in some conspiracism's danker fever swamps, the Great Reset really exists. The World Economic Forum, which organizes the annual conference, Davos, has launched an initiative called Yes, the Great Reset. It has its own website. Indeed it does. But after noting the involvement of partners such as Apple, Microsoft, Facebook, IBM, IKEA, Lockheed Martin, Ericsson, and Deloitte, Sixsmith doubts whether the Great Reset can be seen, as some like to suggest, even allowing for a bit of hype as socialist, left, Marxist, or a global communist takeover plan. And from what I have read so far about the Great Reset, both in its website and what I've been reading from some of these articles, is the fact that this isn't necessarily socialism, as they try to say. This is more corporatism, which is a little bit more dangerous. And we've seen across the country, as people are starting to fold up their small businesses because they can't afford to keep their doors open, because they have no customers. Restaurants that can't function when they can seat 16 and they can only allow 4 people in the building at a time. Small grocery stores, mom and pop stores that can't compete with Walmart or Festival or Woodman's or I don't know what they have in other parts of the country, Kroger or Stop and Shop or anything like that have to shut down because they just can't compete. They can't keep their prices low. Meat markets, the meat market that I have here in my little town, had to almost double their prices just to keep their doors open. And then wonder why people are going over to the Piggly Wiggly and getting their meat, because they can't afford to go to the meat market and get their meat. We sit here and we see the government get all these small businesses out of the way to pave the way for the big corporations to come in and control your life. And now we sit here wondering what's going to happen with the rest of this. So we will see. And I've got some really good questions for our panelists here. We're going to check in with the live chat here just a sec to see what you guys are doing. And then we will bring everybody else in. I've got Aimless watching trains go by. More Stephen Ignoramus. Post Jazz is here. Sergeant Peterson wants me to show feet. I see the dancing naked guy, which I can't identify who that is. But yeah, you guys have got a really, really good conversation going in here. And we will get some questions coming from this after the panelists. I think everybody's going to stick around for just a little bit to come and hang out and talk with us and answer your questions. I don't know who's going to stay for the entirety, but I think everybody's going to stay for at least just a little bit. So we will see what happens here. But at this point, I think it's time for us to go ahead and bring on the panelists. So, where is that scene? There it is. And here we go. Let me get rid of this screen over here. And this screen. A little bit on air production, that always helps here. So if you guys want to go ahead and unmute as we start to get through and get introductions made here. So starting from my left to my right, from the top to the bottom, we first start with the host of the Daily Ignoramus, and yet he still can't make it out the cul-de-sac, Stephen Ignoramus.
Oh, why, thank you, sir. How's it going? Thanks for having me on.
To my right, we have the editor-in-chief of the No Man's Zone, Angela Ramirez.
Hi, thanks for having me on.
Thank you. To the bottom, to the left, we have the hostess of the Jessica Green Show, Jessica Green.
Hi, everybody.
Also, interesting to note, the only other person who's ever been able to say, and this is contemporary on the air.
That's very true.
And to the right on the bottom, we have homeschool advocate, and I don't know if you have a project of your own at all, but we have Quest Fanning.
Hey, good to see you again.
Welcome back. So, first off, did I get all your titles right?
You did.
Everything was great. Thank you for including a lyric of mine. That warmed my heart.
Yeah, I thought about it at the last second here. So, how are you guys doing today? Everybody's Saturday going well?
Yeah.
Just ready for the great reset.
The great reset. Are you going to be reset?
I just tweeted out you have to make sure you blow in the cartridge first. Before you know?
All right. Well, I've got some questions for all of this here, and I'm going to give you guys a chance to plug everything. I do have links to what I know of as your most prominent projects in the description below on the YouTube video, and I believe on the DLive video as well. So if you guys want to check these fine folks out who came to help me, make sure you check all of the links that are down below and check all these people out. But let's see what we've got here first. So I'm going to start. I'm going to ask Stephen first, and we're going to go around, but don't be afraid to do a little bit of crosstalk on this. So if you hear something that you want to comment on from any of these other guys, this isn't going to be like a debate schedule where okay, you've got 2 minutes, 2 minutes, 2 minutes. I'll ask the question, and then you guys throw down with each other if you hear something that you want to hear. So I'm going to start with Stephen here. Where did you first hear about the Great Reset?
I heard of it when I think most of the mainstream did, a couple weeks ago, 2 or 3 weeks ago. I mean, I've been looking at conspiracy theories and things like that for many years, but the actual term, I didn't hear it till recently. And that's one of the things I was writing down when you were doing your monologue is it's just funny when something raises to the forefront real. Like, I didn't even know who Klaus Schwab was a month ago. And he just raises to the forefront. But Trudeau, openly said he wanted it. Klaus Schwab, that's the name. He didn't write the book. I was looking it up. Does anyone know what sustainable development is? Sustainable Development Impact Summit at the World Economic Forum. That's what the speech was.
An oxymoron?
Yes.
No, I mean, if I heard about sustainable development, I would think of a more energy efficient housing unit. That's what I would think of when I heard something like that.
Now, I do know that departments of transportation often get with ecological organizations to make sure that they're not, building a road on an area where there's an endangered plant or an endangered animal, which I had a bit of a prejudice thinking that departments of transportation probably wouldn't take that into account, but they very much do. Mm-hmm. So when I hear sustainable development, I think of something like that.
Yeah, that's what I think about it. But were you going somewhere with that one, or?
No, not really. I thought it was very interesting that they work so closely with the ecology department to, try not to disturb any, rare wildlife, which, is a nice thing to do. You wouldn't think that a government would necessarily consider that when plowing a road through an area. It's a bit of a prejudice that I had that I kind of alleviated by looking into it. And I was like, oh, they actually kind of give a shit about endangered species, which is nice to know.
Did they ever actually do it, though? Did they ever? I don't know. I'm very skeptical of studies to the point where I don't know if they actually even exist in the first place. Like, did they ever, save the life of the right animal? That's what I always wonder, you know?
So the only thing that I know of in real life where that occurred is in my home state of Georgia, where there is a rare type of flower that's only native to this state, and where they had wanted to build a new on-ramp onto a highway would have come through that area, and they actually relocated where the on-ramp would be as not to disturb where this rare flower was. And I thought, that's very interesting that they would take that much effort and time to move this on-ramp, a mile down the road so as not to
Wow.
disturb a flower.
Amazing.
Yeah.
There was a development going on just around the block from me where they were using government funds for a sweetheart loan, and there was a box that was supposed to be checked or not checked about an environmental impact study, whether or not there was a chance that the environment, including the local economy, would be impacted by this new building. I'm in an area where I'm in a 4-story brownstone, and most of the buildings are 4 or 6-story, pre-war apartment buildings. And this is a 23-story building, luxury condos mostly, luxury apartments mostly, and you'd think that might be a little out of the ordinary, so there would be an impact. So I was actually involved in a lawsuit to make them check the box, to do an impact study, specifically because it was using government funds for a sweetheart loan. So sustainability has all kinds of funny connotations.
Yeah, none of this shit is real. Like, that's what I was just writing down. I was like writing down point by point when we were talking about this Klaus Schwab speech or whatever. All this is fake. Like equity of outcome doesn't, like, this guy's an elite. These guys are all elites.
Yeah.
And what do you mean equality of outcome? I mean, for a certain level underneath you, but then you get to, like, be above that. It just doesn't even make sense. But you guys are all talking about stuff at the local level. Like it's just made me smile about the flower. Like, to Klaus Schwab, that's like a people, like a nation of people. Like that like flower that he wants is like probably like 6 or 7 million people in like Latvia or some shit. Like, so
Well,
it's just,
I mean,
it's
it's
like
not just,
grand chess move stuff.
It's
Now,
not
it's
just
fair to
rare
point-
stuff, though, either, because I know my cousin, not the campground he owns now, but the last campground that he owned, there was a pond. It was a man-made pond, first off. It was a completely man-made pond. It wasn't connected to any waterway anywhere close to it. But there was a possibility that a type of common bullfrog could use it for spawning at some point 30 years in the future. And he had to go through miles and miles of paperwork.
Did you say could?
Could, possibly, in the next
Could.
30 years. And he had to go through
Just to
miles and
restore it to
miles.
what it was before.
What's that?
Just to restore it to not being a pond.
No, he wanted to because there was sediment and leaves fell into there and whatnot. There was sediment through the bottom. He just wanted to dredge it out and clean it up, and he had to go through miles of paperwork just to do that.
Yeah, so when I think of sustainable development, I think it's kind of like a band-aid on a bigger issue. Like they do the bare minimum to make it feel sustainable. Like here in Colorado, we have this whole thing about using exterior lights that don't give up too much light pollution, but at the end of the day, not enough buildings actually do anything to make it so that it would be like more beneficial to nightlife. And I think that kind of coast to coast, that is a common theme, is people like do a very bare minimum to make it feel sustainable, but at the end of the day, it's not actually making any real difference.
Yeah, it's
I don't know,
about
that's
feelings.
my opinion.
No, it's so
Yeah,
true. Yeah, it's
exactly.
all about feelings. It's like the plastic straws, and you like buy them and walk away in a plastic bag. Like you
Exactly,
buy your
the
paper
plastic
straws, then you throw it like give money to a bum who pisses on someone, and like like dang it.
It's like the
Exactly,
paradox
yes.
of the low flush toilet, that it's supposed to save water because it's low flush, but you
flush
end
it
up
3
having to
times.
flush 3 or 4 times in order to get everything to
Right,
go down,
exactly.
wasting
Wow.
more water.
Well, what you have to do is eat less.
That's the plan.
Sorry.
That's the plan.
That is the plan, yeah.
Well, Green
You know
New
that-
Deal. Green
Well,
New
they're
Deal.
trying to-
That's supposed to be sustainable, but it's not sustainable in terms of we can actually afford it.
Yeah, like Klaus Schwab was literally, I think he literally said we're not going to eat meat in the future. He's I think he literally said that the elites will eat meat, and like what he's saying is like, I wrote this down. It's literally the lyrics to Imagine by John Lennon. Like it's like no possessions. He says you'll be happy with no possessions. You'll be happy owning nothing. There's gonna be no land ownership, but someone always owns land. It's like gonna be him. and like
Well-
Elon Musk.
Well, this is the hubris of the socialist, is that you can build a better man, and they always have this enhanced human being that they're going to create, which sort of is a tongue-in-cheek way of saying the lower types of people won't be there anymore.
Well, I may be giving away just how red my neck actually is out here, but I'm going to use the classic trope on this. I mean, if God didn't intend us to eat animals, he wouldn't have made them taste so goddamn good.
Right. Yeah.
So I want to move on and get the rest of your takes on this here. So, Angela, where was the first time you heard about the Great Reset?
I've been hearing like rumors about it for a long time, and I follow Tim Pool's channel, and he kind of put it on my radar, talking about how the World Economic Forum was actually making a gun for it. And so that's when I kind of realized that it was a real thing. And then I heard Trudeau talk about it and started looking into the Build Back Better and how that phrasing is being used all over the world. Yeah. And then I really started getting into it. So yeah, probably like, I don't know, for real, about a month ago.
Wow.
I guess I never
Build
thought
Back
about
Better.
the Build Back Better part of this too, but I
Oh,
mean, yeah,
that's one of the biggest parts
Biden's
of
got
it.
a hard on for that.
Yeah.
That's one of the biggest parts that they've used it for a long time.
yeah.
Say it 3 times fast, you know?
Build Back
Yeah.
Better, man. I got hairy legs.
They should just call it the thing, man. That will be where, like,
No, the
yeah,
thing.
just the
That
thing,
was
man.
the thing.
Yeah, the thing, man.
Jessica, what about
Wow.
you?
So seriously, I didn't hear about it until that image started going around Twitter, where it was like several different people at different speeches, and there was like the Build Back Better behind them, and that kind of came at the same time as the Great Reset, or the mention of the Great Reset came into my like view, and so they kind of came out together, and I was like, huh, okay, that is a little weird, I guess. I didn't take it too seriously until I started seeing all these videos and these speeches, that this has actually been something they've been talking about for a long time. And I was like, oh, okay.
Well, you
Maybe
know,
this is something to pay attention to.
I mean, with me too. I got introduced to this. I'm like, this is just another fucking conspiracy theory. There can't be any backing into this. And then I realized that they're promoting it in Time magazine.
Yeah. They just ran an article in Time.
Dude,
I read
every
from
one
it.
of those conspiracies are true, though. Every
Yeah,
one of the
do
ones
I-
that you like badmouth are the ones that are like the hallmarks of ones that were bullshit 5 years ago are all like actually true, though.
It's like, do
At least
I
in my
theorize that people conspire behind closed doors? Yes, because they get caught doing it all of the time.
All the time. There's
Every time.
there's like pay stubs of medical supplies and them moving money around from 2018 with like IBM and Fortune 500 companies labeled COVID-19. Like they talked about, like this shit is. It's more than anything. It's like this whole thing's like a litmus test to see how many retards there are. You know?
Oh, there are a lot of those.
No, dude.
Steven, I'm really
No.
glad. For a second there, I thought you were saying lizard test, and I was just gonna be like, uh-oh. God distance.
Alex Jones passed that years ago. No, I've actually never looked into the reptilians. But if you want to send me something, Quest.
So, to round this question out here, Quest, where did you hear about this first?
You know, I think I've heard of it tangentially for a while now. I mean, I'm a subscriber to The Economist, and you know, so you get some interesting takes in there. You get some interesting, you know, different perspectives. So I'm pretty sure I've heard of this concept a while back, but it's like more like one of those things where it's like you know, where the, you know, taking advantage of a crisis or getting ready to take advantage of a crisis. You know, never let a good crisis go to waste. I believe that was Rahm Emanuel, but
Yeah.
you know, I think that there is a broader, you know, globalist theme. I don't want to you know, badmouth globalism overall. I mean, I like the idea of opportunity. Opportunity is great, but when you're trying to corner the market on you and your buddies getting the advantages of it, that's a problem.
Yeah. You know, I knew someone who owns the Economist. It's the Rothschild family. Owns 43% stake in the Economist.
No way.
They own everything, though. I mean,
wait, 43. Are you sure you're not getting confused? Because it was founded in 1843 to fight the Corn Laws.
really? That's a cool
Yeah.
little history bit. I don't know. I mean, I'm actually going to do a bunch of shows over the next couple weeks on what you would call like big philanthropy, because that's a part of the system that's really, really bad. I mean,
Trying to control the levers.
Yeah, all kinds of stuff. Yeah, like the Rockefellers are a big part of this. I mean, they've always, the global elites have always tried to do something like this. It's kind of
I-
like the maximum level of power, like given that we're not on Mars or whatever right now, is the world. You know, it's the whole world.
I saw something.
And,
I saw something the other day about what you would think would be the most benign and kind-hearted of pursuits. Feeding the hungry, right? I mean, I think I'm pretty pro feeding the hungry. I think most of us should be. But what it was looking at was two aspects. One was what it does to a local economy when you just flood a given area with aid. Like I'm selling food and suddenly I'm out of business. And the other thing was what kinds of foodstuffs they tend to focus on, which is basically like very high calorie,
yuck, really?
Very high calorie, very carb centric stuff. I mean, like you're talking about like xanthan gum mixed with like corn syrup, and it's like, let's just give them like 5,000 calories of this and they'll be okay. I mean, not necessarily the most sustainable decisions.
Well, yeah, and I know I saw in the chat there somebody was talking about grow your own people meat, and you can eat people meat that way too.
Dude.
And, I mean, I know we talked about Alec Jones already, and I mean he's ready for that.
Yo,
I'll eat my neighbors,
have
all
you
right?
guys seen this article that just came out?
Reticently.
Do you guys? This article just came out that was like, there's these scientists. It was literally like clone human. Like we made meat from human cells. Let me explain to you why it's not actually cannibalism. Hee hee.
No, it's cannibalism.
Yo, straight. I'm sorry, that like split up. My bad. And I was like yelled at him like.
Do you know about that book, The Gospel of Wealth?
No, that's
So
first time
Andrew-
hearing of it.
Speaking of-
what's his name? Napoleon something.
Andrew Carnegie wrote it.
Yeah.
And it's so, just because we were on the topic of like sort of the robber barons and their desire to remake society. The Gospel of Wealth is a book that you might want to look into because it was written by Andrew Carnegie about now that we have all this money, what do we do with it? And because they had amassed a greater through, the free market of the American system, they were able to amass this great wealth. And they said, okay, we have all this money. Don't we sort of have a responsibility back to society? And I think a lot of the ideas that you hear people like Bloomberg and who's the other big rich
Bill
guy?
Gates.
Yeah, Bill Gates. Yeah, all of these guys, I think they follow in the footsteps of sort of the Gospel of Wealth
Yeah.
book line. So that might be something, if you're going to do some episodes about that, you might want to look into that book.
What would you guys do? Let me ask Angela that. Okay, if you had like $100 billion, would you like feel like what would you feel like a need to help a society? Like $100 billion.
I mean,
Like,
yeah,
change
to
the
an
world?
extent, but I think where people go wrong, and I think, I think that what I've seen, like doing my research into big philanthropy, like I really like how you coined it, big philanthropy, because that's exactly what it is. It's no different from these other big industries where they're like using shell companies to shield themselves from taxes. Like, I mean, very much big philanthropy is just they're just playing the game, in my opinion. Like, this is what George Soros has been doing for a really long time. This is what all the big like what Jessica said, the robber barons have been doing for a long time. I think, in my opinion, I would like to help people, but I don't think that it's so easy as just giving handouts. I don't think that that's how things work. Like, I really like the idea of microloans in like developing countries where you give people like a few $100s to start a business, and they're not so indebted that they never get back out, and they're not so over leveraged that they're never able to like actually grow their company. And I think that what big philanthropy does is like kind of the exact opposite, is they start throwing money into industries and they start tanking the businesses that are local and start just ruining the whole local economy. And yeah, that's kind of my opinion.
Not very different from what the IMF does. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Right.
The microloans have a very exceedingly low rate of default as well. I mean,
Yeah.
people who are given faith to do their thing, and rather than, I think that sometimes there is, and I think it's not necessarily evil or anything like that. It's more like, human nature, that someone who's done well thinks that folks that haven't met the same breaks as them, might be morally inferior or something like that. Like that not giving someone the opportunity is best for them. Like coddling, infantilizing folks is
Yeah.
actually, you know, in their best interest. But in the long run, the more autonomy you give people, the better they tend to do. They'll make mistakes, and some of them will fall right off the tracks. But most people, it's opportunity is the key to everything. Everything going well.
You have a right to fail too.
Mhm.
Right. Yeah.
And through failure, most of the people who have achieved enormous success will tell you that they've failed more than other people. And so if you take away people's ability to fail, you take away the stepping stone by which we gain success.
All right, that is actually the perfect segue into the next question I wanted to ask you guys with that here. Now, I mentioned on the monologue that through the Trump presidency, we were trucking along, and I mean, they couldn't find people to fill all these jobs off of here. And now all of a sudden, we had an event that happened in our country that brought us back to the point of needing to talk about redistribution and a great reset that comes along with this. So, and I'm going to jump all this question for you guys because this doesn't really require an individual answer, and then you guys can cross-talk this out. But do you think it would have been feasible to introduce something like a great reset without a catalyst like COVID-19, especially with where we were coming into 2020? Go ahead, whoever wants to go first.
I don't think that people would have hopped on board as readily. I think that this type
agree.
of, whether or not it's a manufactured crisis, I think that people are more willing to accept something new now that everything is like so many businesses are tanking. Whereas if it was just the normal economy, especially the way things were going in, January, let's say, before everything started happening, I don't think people would have been so readily interested.
One of the things happening right now that I think is kind of going under the radar is the level of entrepreneurship that we're seeing. Like there are people, and I'm not talking like carpetbagging or anything nefarious like that. I'm talking about people looking at opportunities, and you've seen like some very good efforts that have helped people in those veins. That because not as many people are home are out at the office, or because this, that, the other thing. There's been a shift that has caused folks to see opportunities that they would not have otherwise seen. Now, it's unfortunate that a lot of this is being stifled at this point, and I wonder how much the reset is depending on people who are not entrepreneurs, people who are much more in the vein of, oh, I'm scared and I'm going to comply. I think that might be a bigger part of what's happening now.
I think people don't change until they're forced to. So you have to make people extremely uncomfortable to get them to do something other than what they're doing. And when the economy is booming and you have businesses unable to find employees because they're doing so well, that's not a ripe situation for a great reset. Things like the Great Depression were an opportunity to reset the way that things were done. And so I don't know, I don't like to say that all of this is calculated. But if it were, what would that look like?
Well, I want to push back on that just a little bit with what you said about entrepreneurship and it being stifled and it not being planned here. Because when we were looking at the Great Recession, I mean, we saw massive amounts of entrepreneurship. I mean, even just small jobs. I know all kinds of small little landscape companies and lawn mowing companies that popped up out of nowhere. And then, of course, the gig economy came up that went along with that. So entrepreneurship was there. But now we're sitting in a situation where there's still the entrepreneurship, but the governments, and especially at local levels, are saying, thou shalt not when it comes to opening a business or being able to open a business. So I think there was some intervention to go in to prevent the entrepreneurship.
Yeah, I mean, one thing I was going to say, when you ask like whether people are down with it or whether they could have done it, it's kind of like, what is it? Like, what are they actually trying to do? They're not trying to do some sustainable development or whatever. I mean, like the whole place where this is going is some sort of conversion of currency or whatever, because you can't inflate things forever. I mean, even the richest person ever can't inflate the economy forever. That's what infinity is. It doesn't make any sense. So they need to convert the currency at some point, and at that point, the people underneath will either have to convert to that currency or start a new one or just barter or whatever. But that's where I think they want it to go, or where it has to go eventually. If you're talking about what it actually is, they're not gonna like remove the trash from the ocean. They're not gonna, they're not gonna solve world hunger. They're not gonna bring peace to the Middle East. Like their end
Oh,
game.
the Donald tried.
Yeah, but I don't consider
He's
him
not
to
part
be,
of the plan.
Yeah, I don't think he's part of the Great Reset. He's not like what Klaus Cotton Schwab is trying to. He's not gonna have a friend in Trump. But I think at the end of the day, they're either trying to like make the dollar be indistinguishable from like a new currency or start a new one or something like that. But I don't think it's about helping people. Well, whatever their intentions, they're not going to help millions of people by doing the big chess moves. Maybe I think that they're going to help some people if you're talking about like CEOs that are, I don't know, like a weird number, not the top 100 CEOs. Like I think all of them, if they're trying to be big chess players, they're not. That doesn't help anyone in the long run. What they're trying to do, but and then it's like conversion of currency or whatever.
Could it possibly
I
be?
do think that they're helping people. I think that
think
they're so
they think that?
disconnected.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like I try to really stay away from mind reading.
Yeah.
I try to really, really stay away from it, even though it's
The
everyone's
reason-
nature too.
The reason that I think that, I'll actually give you a reason, and it's not attributed to mind reading, but there are minutes from the meetings that Robespierre had with the Office of Public
Yes.
Safety, which is an
Yes.
interesting, isn't it interesting that they called it the Office of Public Safety? So
Basically.
Robespierre and his other French fellows, they kept minutes to their meetings where they were discussing how they were going to remake the human being into this more enlightened person. And they they thought of themselves as actually improving things. So even though it resulted in, we've got to cut off 55,000 people's heads in order to realize our vision, the people who are left over after will have a much better time of things, and therefore
Yeah.
we're doing the right thing.
Less crowding.
I don't think that it matters at that point. Like that's what I mean about I try to like stay away from mind reading. But like you think about it, like a person that has the best of it, like you try to like straw man and steel man each side of the argument. You take the person with the best intentions of all time, but is doing the most harmful thing. That person has to get put down like a dog because they're doing the most harmful thing of all time, but their intentions. So it's like at that point, it's like you don't have to mind read to know that like the outcome might be so bad. The possibility of the worst outcome, even with the best intentions, is terrible. But it's like
I
it's all,
think
yeah.
it's to the point that they're not seeing the unintended consequences of
Yeah.
their actions. They only see
agree.
what can go the best possible way with it. And
Who
the
do you
best
think-
possible way is to remake the human animal into something that it's not.
Can you give me an example of a person that you think is nefarious?
I mean, I think most people, even down to some of the most like religious fundamental ISIS terrorist person,
Yeah, no one
thinks
thinks they're a
on
bad
some
person.
level that he's doing the
Yeah,
right thing.
That's the point. Yeah, no one really thinks they're a bad person. Yeah.
Right. So,
Even the coolest guys like Hitler.
What about
I
Hitler's
think
dog?
even Hitler probably thought he was doing the right thing, as hard as that is
100%.
to imagine.
Yeah, that's why it's funny. Anyway,
Please don't clip that and take it out of context.
you can clip me. You can do what you want with it.
The new intro, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, I mean, it's ending in some sort of like. I mean, the reason I really don't think this is gonna work is because I don't think globalism can really be achieved. Like there's a reason that we still say things like the third world, because there's no such thing as globalism. It's always gonna end in nations and tribes. So at the end of the day, these people are just gonna be in their bunkers somewhere in like a tower, like eating each other or whatever.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think back to the Soviet Union and like their early start, like back in 1918, how their goal was pretty much to make everything better. We're going to wipe out the kulaks because the kulaks are taking over. Like, the kulaks, they climbed out of their hole and we're going to fix this. And their ultimate goal was equity. And I think that's kind of going back to like, you know what I mean? And I think that that's one of the words that is used in the World Economic Forum's Great Reset is equity. We're going to achieve equity. And that whole idea of equity versus equality of opportunity is like where everybody gets so caught up. It's like, yes, everybody should have equality of opportunity because then, like Jessica said, you have the opportunity to fail. But when you start saying, no, everybody needs to be equal, you start getting into like the genocidal practices of, well, as long as the ends justify the means, then we're all good. And I think we saw that play out in China. We saw that play out in the early Soviet Union, like back when the Bolshevik Revolution Revolution happened. I think that that's all like kind of the same concept.
So my question for you, Angela, is okay. So
Yeah.
you study Marxism and stuff.
Yeah.
Okay. So in the Bolshevik Revolution, or there is it Lenin or whatever, and there's people above Lenin that were like ranking Lenin and like. But I know that Lenin actually personally killed people and stuff like that. But there had to be foot soldiers, and you could call them like the street people right now or whatever. Do you think? But there were also elites being taken out by the Bolsheviks. Like, do you think a person like Klaus Schwab and Bill Gates would be the people calling hits and killing people, or getting killed?
No, I don't think so. I think what we saw during the Bolshevik Revolution, I mean, like one of the people everybody forgets about is Trotsky, right? Yeah. Like they're apologists, and they're like, oh, if he just had control of the revolution, then things would be different, right? It would have never turned into the genocidal disaster that it was. But in reality, what we saw was basically that like Lenin and Stalin, they like kind of set the stage for what it would be, and they were kind of like, it wasn't by any means necessary, and I don't think that they were necessarily the ones saying, okay, we're going to call these hits. So I think what it was, they had a plan, and the higher level generals knew what that plan was, and it was, okay, well, we're going to be in serious trouble if this doesn't work. And I think very much so that is kind of the case with these higher level elites, is this is the plan, and then the people who rank below that say, okay, we have to make this plan work by any means necessary, and that is kind of a trickle down effect, is kind of my perspective on it.
I think that a lot of, I mean, that you brought up Trotsky. I frequently go back to saying this. I think that a lot of like, these Antifa people, that kind of thing, who are much lower down, never, not that high up the food chain, but these are, mostly privileged people, really privileged people who imagine themselves, who are pretending at egalitarianism and are imagining themselves getting their upper middle class position cemented, more permanently. That, I think they all envision themselves as Lenins, and they're all going to be Trotskys.
I think
Nice.
one thing to
Yeah.
point out would be that the excuse for making the one party state, the Communist Party state, was that they couldn't trust the people who were in the government before. Any of the provisional government, any of the old generals, any of the people who used to work for the Tsar, well, we can't trust these people anymore. So we have to have a government that consists of people we know are cool. And that was the excuse for having the one party communist system. And so the membership of the Communist Party shot up by millions overnight, because to participate in society, you had to be then a communist. So those are incremental steps that could be taken here very easily. If you don't have, say, a COVID vaccine, if you
Right.
don't participate in the culture in the way that we want you to, you can be left out of it, which is a very polite way of saying you can
Yeah.
be starved or put up against a
Yeah.
wall, but hopefully it won't come to that.
Well, I've got a little interesting thought
Yeah.
experiment to go along
No,
with
I
this.
think
Oh, did I interrupt?
an interesting thought experiment.
Yeah.
Oh no, go ahead.
I want to ask, now that we're talking about, things like people not participating and being starved out in a polite way here. So I want to go around round robin like I did before, and ask you guys each what you think the Great Reset would do to you personally. And I want to start with Quest. So personally, if from what you've seen out of the Great Reset so far, what do you think? How do you think that would personally affect you and your family, per se?
Well, I can tell you that I'm already in a position where I take less advantage of what's available socially. I mean, in our society, being the fact being that I pay my contribution toward public school and don't use it. I just imagine it becoming much, much worse. That's all. I mean, I'm unfortunate
You
that
said that so happily. That was amazing.
Well, I mean, do I have a choice?
Yeah.
But like we make sacrifices. My wife, she has a background in education, and she spends all of her time, educating our daughter, and I spend a good chunk of my time educating our daughter, and we spend a lot of resources traveling, getting museum memberships, all kinds of stuff. And obviously we've been able to make less use of that this year, but a month ago we were down in Mexico City. We get around, we try to take advantage of what we can, and it's not easy. And I imagine that there's a very good chance that this would break us financially.
Did you bring back super Mexican diarrhea COVID with you?
No, the only corona I had was beer.
Jessica, how do you think Great Reset would help or affect you in your day-to-day life?
I mean, they're talking about a global economic collapse. So we're talking about supply chain disruptions. We're talking about people in the third world who may starve to death. So, we're going to have a ripple effect that's going to maybe rival some of the situation of the Great Depression. I know that there are a lot of people who were surviving on an economy that wasn't necessarily real, that was made of fiat and credit. And that Piper is eventually going to come to call. You can force that to come to call if you make the economy dead stop against a brick wall. All of those moving pieces don't suddenly just reassemble themselves after you collided it, make it stop like that. So I'm deeply fearful of a second national lockdown. And I have a lot of hope in that I see people resisting it, but it makes me wonder how far the government is willing to go in order to enforce it. And so it leaves a lot of questions. Like my state of Georgia, for example, didn't have the same kind of lockdowns that other states did. And I think that if there were a national lockdown, we would possibly resist it here. I would hope that my governor would resist it. Well, Georgia has resisted federal rule before, and we saw how that went. So I don't like existing in this nebulous realm of questions, but that's all we have right now is what could possibly happen. There's no certainties.
Well, I know with you particularly, Jessica, you share some of the same interests that I do in the fact that, you're into cooking and canning.
Mm-hmm.
So plus you keep a garden. I don't personally have the space to keep a garden like that, but
the reason I didn't bring up the garden, I'm very into like prepping and gardening and canning and all of those great and wonderful things. And I've been doing it for 5 years. I've got a lot of experience under my belt doing it. And even with all the experience that I have, I'm nowhere near where a person could be to live sustainably off the land. And I think that a lot of people fool themselves into thinking that if they have 100 cans of Dinty Moore in their basement and a tomato plant out back, that they're going to be just fine. And they don't realize, that they probably consume hundreds of different species and products that are carted to them from all over the planet because of this massive logistic supply chain. And secondly, that if that collapses in any way, you've only got about 3 days worth of materials left on the shelves for you and the rest of everybody else who lives around you to survive off of. And then after that, there's not really enough squirrel around for everybody to eat well. So I don't laugh at the idea that things would fall down and collapse. I don't want that to happen. And I really hope that we can find some way to keep the civilized aspect, the supply chain aspect of our country rolling, even if the political dynamics change.
Angela, what about you?
So I'm very much in Jessica's boat with the food supply issue. I think that that's one of the biggest concerns. We eat pretty much exclusively local raised like beef. We eat local raised vegetables, and we're in the process right now of purchasing acreage in order to basically build something that's a little bit more sustainable and accessible. Jessica's giving me the thumbs up.
Yeah.
And here in Colorado, one of the issues that we already have outside of the Great Reset is access to water rights. There is a very strict water regulation here in Colorado, whereas if you have only 5 acres, you can only water basically your home, and you have to have 35 to 40 acres in order to supply your property. And one of the goals of the Great Reset is basically to build green urban infrastructure and to one of the things that they say here is to improve the track record of environmental governance. And that is a huge red flag for people who live off the land, because already you see land and water rights being stripped from farmers and homesteaders, at least in Colorado. And if there was to be some sort of global movement to make everybody live more sustainably, quote unquote, that would be left to who? That would be left to the big corporations as opposed to individuals. And individuals would really have no say over whether or not they can utilize their water that's already on their property, whether or not they can utilize the soil the way that they see fit. And I think, I mean, at least like in places like Colorado, California, that's already been an issue. Furthermore, I think, well, I'm kind of in an interesting position because my dad retired to Indonesia, and that is a third world country. And already there, with everything that's going on, tourism, which is their primary economic force, has failed. So yeah, I think third world countries will suffer first, and then we'll see the first world countries with logistical supply chains established take a hit after that.
Mm-hmm. And especially with, I mean, the corporatism about all this too. And I mean, just seeing what COVID did to getting the small businesses out of the way so that Amazon and Microsoft and Walmart could power ahead. And I mean, Bezos doubled his personal wealth over this.
Yeah, and you know what? That's something else I'd like to point out that has been on my radar is this whole COVID crisis has put a big wedge in between people who can operate online and people who are forced to work in person. For example, restaurateurs and the tourism industry. These positions where they're lower paid positions, but you have to be there physically in order to work. You can't operate the business digitally. That those industries have taken a hit. Whereas if you were fortunate enough to be able to work online, whether that's an e-commerce store or otherwise, you are in a position where you can continue to work and make an income. But that's not the case for people who have to be there physically.
Yeah.
I think what you're saying about the wedge, like a social wedge, is driven there too. Like more than we realize that, like sort of,
Yeah.
And a lot of the people who advocate for lockdowns, you'll notice, do have positions where they can work from home. And then, you know, I worked in the restaurant industry for nearly 10 years before I got married. And if you had taken that out, we wouldn't have survived. We would have been evicted from our home. So I understand where there are people who are saying, okay, we don't want anyone else to die, but you're going to secure that people are going to lose their livelihoods, their homes, their ability to send their children to school. So there are more kinds of death than just the physical death of the elderly. It's the loss of your life as you know it.
Also, imagine if you're depending for some reason on a handout from the government at this point, right? What does that do to your self-esteem? What does that do to, you know, what you teach your children? What does that do to your social standing? I mean, it's very hard to measure, you know, the total impact. What we have been seeing is we've been seeing, you know, death rates that are at least as high as we expected with places that have been locked down, right? We've been seeing a lot of suicides. We've been seeing I would say inappropriately counted deaths. Suddenly we don't have anyone dying from the flu. We have, you know, we don't have any recognition of the pull forward of what large percentage of the people who have died of COVID are people that were going to die in the next year. You know, I mean, none of this is something that we're really looking at. Instead, we're creating a very miserable situation for many, many people. And those who are more privileged are more apt to expect this, you know, to virtue signal.
That's right.
Stephen, what about you? How does this Great Reset affect you personally?
Look, I mean, I'm not as necessarily like black pilled or like, you know, unhopeful, because I don't know I literally don't know what's going to happen. You know, like, you know, if it's just inflation that keeps happening, then this shit could go for 12 more years. It's going to be crazy. But then in 12 years, it's going to be terrible. So I don't know. It all depends on what happened. Like, you know, so it's like all the common arguments about why it might be bad or it might be good are just a little bit cliche. I don't know. It's like, 'cause like the people have always had to learn new skills to get ahead. I make money online, but I'm not in a very advantageous position because I don't sell stuff. I don't make stuff. I talk crap into a mic and teach kids music, you know? So if like if it got really, really bad, I'd be out of a job too, even though I do make money online, and a lot of it. And like, I'm in a very good, like, advantageous position, but I'm very anti-lockdown. You know, I think every single thing nothing should have ever closed at all. other than like voluntary businesses, like if they want to close, cool, but then they might go out of business. I don't know. But you should have been learning to homestead and can and work with firearms and learn martial arts and like all the things that are like like we need collective decentralization or the shit is going to hit the fan very like eventually, because that's how math works. But me personally, I don't know. I'm about to buy a place. I don't think it's gonna. I think like a lot of this, like I'm not gonna go on a huge rant about it, but a lot of it comes down to like spiritual stuff, and like the people trying to enact the biggest change in the world are usually like trying to play God in a really weird way. And I think what you should do like the opposite of that. You should like serve God on a small level, and everyone can do that, and it's usually not going to be that bad in the long run until it is, and we might be headed there. But if you, I don't know, if you stop working, then it gets even worse. Mm-hmm. So, what do you do? Like, so take precautions, but I don't know. Like, also storing for like years is also kind of a sickness. Like storing food for like 5 years, you don't know. You're not God. Like, you don't know when winter's coming. Like Ned Stark didn't even know, and you ain't Ned Stark. So I don't know. It's just like I don't know. I'm like a centrist on most of this stuff. It might get terrible. Like I've read books, but it's also if you have skills and you have a good head and you just I don't know. You can do it. It's just like we also give them a ton of power. We've given them a ton of power. So if you like get acreage and what everyone here seems smart, but there's a lot of dummies out there. So they might.
There are a bunch
starve,
of those.
Man, they might starve and die, dude. Like, I'm sorry.
There's an ability to realistically understand risk, right? And then there's fear. And
yes,
I mean, I don't want to belittle anybody, but there are a lot of people out there who are operating off fear.
It's not good.
So there is a phrase people use called a doomsday prepper, and it usually indicates somebody who's like, if I mention canning, that's the first thing out of somebody's mouth is, oh, you're a doomsday prepper. And what I will say is that the doomsday preppers are the people who are fighting each other in a Costco for the last roll of toilet paper. That's a person who doesn't prepare anything for themselves until doomsday happens. So, even when you look at all of these people who do this for a living, a lot of them will tell you not to store anything for over a year. If you're preparing for over 5 years, like you're just dumping money down the drain.
Yeah.
And it's okay to have some things. Storms happen all the time. People get cut off from services for a couple of days all the time. That really does happen. And to be prepared for that is a really smart thing. To prepare for the end of days, really you're just sort of collecting supplies for the guy on the block with the most guns. So,
which you should be though. Like that's the bad. Like that's more important than the food is be that guy.
True. So yeah,
and it is a guy.
The apocalypse is coming down.
When you were talking earlier about not being able to have enough to live off of as far as growing. I mean, I've got a great step on the porch that can supply like 4 or 5% of my food. But honestly, I think I can outlast a lot of the other people in this block.
Nice.
So maybe
it's the
I'll
bear argument,
land.
dude. You just outrun the bear, let them eat each other. Like, it's just like I don't know. Like I hate to be all morbid or whatever. Like I try to have a sense of humor about everything, but it's like if you feed everyone, you starve. And I'm just going to the extreme. I'm not saying that's the situation we're in. And I help people when they're in need as well. But it will come a day where it's like there will come a day where stupid people have to be allowed to fail. When it gets bad enough, failure is starvation. Therefore, that is going to happen, and it's like, what can you do other than like this circle? Like, if you guys were at my homestead, I would work with all of you. I can sign off on like you guys are all really cool, But like a certain amount of it's what I mean. Like I brought it up earlier when it's like a person with the best intentions is trying to commit harm. That's like if it's like a crazy bitch shouting in the street. You have to knock that bitch out, even though like I don't hit women. Like we've seen it like with these crazy women with knives and shit. Like you have to drop that person like a bad habit right then, or shit is gonna get worse. And that has to happen on a mass scale, but it doesn't mean kill them. It means they're like, dude, if you're just like when people are starving and you're eating like like Skittles and Snickers all day, and like I don't know, like how can I help you? Like what can we help? How can we do it if it's on you to do it? It drives me crazy, but that's how I feel.
I actually like to tell people if you're worried about prepping, the best thing you can do to prep going forward is to take care of your health.
Yes.
The healthier you are,
Bam.
the more you can provide for the people around you. You can help people around you, the more work you can do, whatever becomes necessary. And so, we live in a really excellent time to be a human. People, things perspectively, put things in perspective. We're doing better as human beings than we've ever done in the history of all human beings. So I agree that the black pill is not the way to go. However, be aware that, hard times happen cyclically in human history. And there's no reason not to just maybe have some rice and beans stored back. But yeah, 5 years down the line, you're just wasting money.
Ridiculous.
Don't do that.
Ridiculous.
So, one of the things I've been hearing a lot since I started hearing about the Great Reset, and this harkens me back to a book by Glenn Beck that I read, which amazes me that I can say those words together because I can't stand Glenn Beck. But he wrote a book basically outlining what the world would look like if Agenda 21 got put into place. And it got me to thinking with this and the fact that they're trying to push this through right now between 21 and 30. Could this have a crossover with Agenda 21 / Agenda 30? Whoever wants it first.
They've always been trying to do this shit. There's a crossover between this and
Pairs.
always.
The first thing to come down is the church. So
100%.
yeah, if
It's,
these,
it's an issue of distrust, isn't it? I mean, if you want an authoritarian regime of any sort, it's because you don't trust people. That's one of the things. I hope I don't go too far off on a tangent here, but with homeschooling, and with mostly self-directed learning. I mean, my daughter, she's turning 6. She's doing mostly second grade stuff, but she's doing some very advanced Spanish. Don't put me on the spot. But most of what she does is actually very self-directed, and that comes back to trust. You have to be able to trust someone in order to let them, make mistakes, let them learn new things, let them, be like, let's drop this when you want to drop it, that kind of thing. And I think that, as a broader society, people that you don't know, like your daughter, people you don't know, you're less apt to trust. But then, it's another layer. There are a lot of people out there who don't trust other people to make their own decisions.
Yeah, that's a little bit weird, man. Some people can't. That's why I'm like not full on libertarian, because there is a non-zero amount of people that literally cannot. And what do you do with that? I don't know what the solution is, but it's like you have to do something with that. I'm not a parent, but I do know that there is you can't let the kid have everything they want. That's madness. So if there are adults that like that. So I don't know what the solution is, but yeah, it's a conundrum that'll be around till the end of time. Is the liberty, authority, letting people fail thing.
Angela, do you
I
have
think-
anything? Oh, go
Yeah,
ahead.
I
so
think
Jess?
just going back to what Jessica said, she said that God is always in the crosshairs, and I
Oh, so
totally agree, because we saw this when Nietzsche wrote his poem, Parable of the Madman, and that was where the phrase "God is dead" came from, and he was a couple decades ahead of the fall of pretty much the nation and almost global genocidal communism. But what happens there, I think it does have a lot to do with trust, but I also think it has a little bit more to do with replacing the concept of God having control with the government having control. And instead of having God, which you have no control over, making ultimate, I don't want to say decisions, but I think you know what I mean. Whereas I think outcomes, yeah, exactly. Whereas it swaps from God having the ultimate control over outcomes to people having ultimate control over outcomes. And I think with that swap is where you start to see things get really weird.
well, this is why I think that the New York City government and what's his name, Cuomo, has targeted the Jewish community. So
Yeah.
I think they hate the Jewish community for the same reason that the Roman Empire hated the Jewish community. It's because their God means more to them than the government does, than the state does, and they can't abide that, because at the end of the day, it's a God, democracy, or the state or whatever you want to call becomes a religion to people. And so
Right.
when you have a group of people, such as the Orthodox Jews of New York City, whose God means more to them than the state, you can't have that. And so I think there is targeted harassment of that community.
And we are seeing
For
a
sure.
lot of state worship going on right now. Like more than I'm comfortable with. And I pretty much want people to worship whatever the hell they want, but the state worship is
think-
concerning me.
I think that if you don't place your God above the state, then you're not good at your religion. No matter the religion. I think that's yeah.
I think I might have been a little unclear before jumping right away to the issue of trust. I mean, because I should have said faith then trust. You know, like if you don't, you lack faith, and that's related to an underlying lack of trust.
Absolutely.
All right, I got one more for you guys here, and it's a bit of a two-parter, and it's going to be another jump ball one for you guys. But if we want to stop this, how much local control and localized planning would have to go into this, including whether or not we can hang on to our own guns in our own families, or what our local governments can do? Because a lot of this does seem to be coming from the federal and sometimes world orders, if you will. So, what about locality, and what about your own personal families? How do we resist this if we don't want this? Whoever wants to go first.
Secession, we decentralize and become as originally intended, where each state is its own separate country, or maybe even groups of states will get together and form regional principalities. There are so many ways that it might work. Just the idea that we haven't done it is no excuse not to try something different. And I think we ought to be having this divorce conversation before we kill each other, which seems to be speeding along rather quickly.
The legitimacy of authority comes from the idea that those who are being governed have some acceptance of it. And we have seen a few times during these lockdowns and such, we've seen a very, you have this image that the guy in charge is telling the underlings in the government how to do things, and the police are going to tell you how to do things. And the fact is they're way outnumbered, and the legitimacy is a veneer. If you crack that, we mostly agree, I'm going to go along with this bullshit edict, this little thing that affected my life in some little way. But if we don't all agree to it, and I remember at one point, months and months ago, there was a point where in California they decided to close down the beaches, and then everybody showed up at the beach on the same day, and it cracks the veneer. And the more you do it, at some point, people who were willing to say, I'm going to take one for the team, I'm going to accept something that I don't think is acceptable just because I think that this person in authority has our best interest in mind. Mm-hmm. They're going to, over something much smaller, they're going to disobey. And their civil disobedience is going to be a real thing this next year or two.
Yeah. I think I agree with Jessica that the way to move forward and having it be like secession on the table is really important. I think it's going to get really, really weird when we start talking about how to divvy up resources. I don't think that. I think that's gonna have. I don't think it can happen without violence. And it's the thing is where people we're speeding towards violence towards each other. We are to me we are and we aren't. Like the two street factions are, but the establishment and establishment entities fighting over what government actually is, which is resources, land, violence, the people. I don't even know how far or close that is away. I can see it never happening. I can see it happening. In what way would it be organized right now? Who is an establishment figure that's talking violence in some way?
In this country, the way that a Great Reset would manifest itself would be through the Democratic Party somehow having successes, right? So, but the thing is, I think that at this point, the reason that there wasn't more success by the Republicans is because in this past election is because of Donald Trump's personality that rubbed people the wrong way. If it weren't for Orange Man Bad, we would be looking at, a Democratic Party that is splitting down the center right now. There are people who are more middle of the road establishment people who are being disrespected by the Democratic Party, and I think that their ability to wield power is going to be greatly diminished.
The Dems, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Anybody else have anything on that one? Otherwise, we'll probably head on over and check in and see what the live
I'm
chat's
sorry.
got to
What
say.
was the original question? Like that round of questioning. We got some good stuff there. What was that?
I was asking how we resist this locally.
Yeah, you just got to decentralize hardcore.
Mm-hmm.
And like if you don't collectively decentralize, and you almost like can't put it on the internet, you got to do like a pact or something. They did this back in the day. It's like if 8 years from today, 4 years from today, we don't get what we want, and you like all sign it and then secede, and it almost like can barely be on the internet. It has to be like a handshake deal, an honor pact, because they can sniff it out and subvert it and all this stuff. But it has to be as local as possible.
Yeah. So I won't name any names, but here in Colorado, that's one of the things that's happening is there's like small groups of people who like, I don't know, for the sake of conversation, they call themselves patriots, but they like are basically keeping everything offline. It's very local, grassroots. Everybody meets in person. Nothing is online. And that's pretty much how, thus far, that's pretty much how we've kept Denver and Colorado from turning into Portland, because there are groups like what we have in Portland here in Colorado, but these small groups of like grassroots organizers have been like out patrolling the streets. They've been out like creating political goals to keep restaurants open. And so I totally agree. It has to be like local, offline, everything, just like really old school. Yeah.
Yeah. The time for public logical conversation is over. It's over. Like it's all about online in public. You just use rhetoric, you use comedy, you use shit posting, you use disinformation, you use all kinds of things. And then in private where you actually, there's corners online where you can do covert things, but I wouldn't trust them.
No.
So you just to me, that's why like being a shit talker is actually good. Cause like, it's an advantageous time for like the public not being able to know, like being able to like pin down your beliefs. If you can like get good at operating in fog of war, you can have those type of things offline. And it's like, and I have to come back and think about to what extent I'm even willing to talk about this stuff. Cause it's like, actually like, you got to like
sound like some Mujahideen stuff going on there, man.
100%. They're smart.
So I think that in a lot of ways there are that decentralization of the individual that you had kind of mentioned going on. There's massive public support for businesses that are resisting lockdown orders. There are just all kinds of little avenues where once the state was unquestionable by the public, now its reputation has been smashed. And so if the only effect of Donald Trump entirely was that he just exposed the cracks, and now everyone can see how like really bad the system is, and it gives people the idea that they need to start trying some things out for themselves, that was completely worth it. And I would call his getting in the way of some of this progressive train, maybe not entirely derailing it, but at least shedding some light on what's going on. That makes it a success, a qualified success.
I exposed the best cracks, the greatest cracks. Nobody exposes cracks like me.
The press,
Yeah,
everybody
you've
understands that the press is lying now. You couldn't have, if you had told me 5 years ago that everyone in the country would know that the press lies to them on a daily basis, I would have thought that was crazy. And now it's common knowledge. Everybody thinks, oh yeah, of course the press is lying. They're the media.
Super feminist Naomi Wolf. If I would have known that Biden was for lockdowns, I would have never voted for him.
Quit watching CNN.
Yeah.
All right. So at this point here, unless anybody's got anything else on that topic here, we're going to turn this over to the live chat for the day. And you guys have been so busy in the live chat, I've got to take my tablet out just so I can get back to the beginning. If anybody's got a jet at any point, let me know so we can get you an opportunity to plug your stuff. Because I want you to all have an opportunity to plug your own stuff. But we're going to start off from the beginning, and we're going to look for questions as well as we can. Looks like we've got some good conversation going in here. Trains Go By says, I can't afford the batteries I've had to change for that 12-minute clock for the last 30 years. Yeah, we're 12 minutes to doomed. Klaus Schnoz, I like this. Steven says, my Indian name is Shitpost Kindly.
Yeah, I need a better one.
You do need a better one. PostJS says, Steven is on Twitch. Willingly? Dude, it's always Twitch.
Is this a freaking roast, bro?
It's always Twitch. Let's see. Sean V. Planet, I am not going to be showing those feet, unfortunately. I am wearing boots, though, so I can't really show too much of those.
Sub to Jay Edgar's OnlyFans.
Yeah, then you can see the feet.
Dude, never mind.
No, go ahead.
I just, dude, there was a bunch of porn on YouTube. People were like blurring it out and screenshotting on Twitter, and there was just a huge thing of nasty stuff on YouTube today that people were like, going crazy over, dude. I couldn't believe it. Like, damn my eyes. And it's like, I just can't believe that, like, you can, like, a student of mine asked me today about, like, YouTube. I'm like, wait, you are on YouTube. Like, you little bastard. Like, get off there. Anyway, keep going.
So Chris Tuttle has the first big question up in here and says, does Sidney Powell have a good lawsuit? Anybody?
I will chime in. So I think that she has something that can at least be solid in court. I don't think that it's a finicky lawsuit, in my opinion. And I think that that's a lot, that has a lot to do with it not being based on fraud, which people keep saying it's fraud, but fraud means like,
Yes.
you turn in a bunch of ballots that belong to somebody else or something like that. I think exactly. Yeah. So I think she's coming at it from the perspective of there was serious flaws in the way the election was conducted, and thus certain results won't be qualified to be counted. So I do think she has a decent lawsuit, and I think we've seen plenty of affidavits that support that. Yeah.
Angela, have you looked into the ACLU in Georgia in the governor's race in 2018?
Yeah, I saw some of that in the live chat.
No, I haven't.
Look into that. Like, okay, so like I
Okay.
watched a couple videos on like there was a couple like just wonks talking about polls and stuff in Georgia, but they brought up like the possibility of the governor's race in 2018 softening up the state, like basically the Kemp playing ball with the ACLU in those groups too much and like softening up for them for some sort of fraud based on like racial stuff. So I don't know if I just gave you a good tip, but I would definitely look into the ACLU in Georgia over the last couple of years.
Okay, I'll check
I don't
that
know.
out.
Yeah, I don't know. I've been doing actual.
So you're saying-
like basically, it's kind of like okay. Let's invent a scenario where it's like how they say they're like the right suppresses votes because they're like racist or whatever. If that's not if that's not true, or they play ball with the people trying to I don't know, like make it go their way too much, you can. Like, people are saying Kemp is a rhino, even though he's a Trump supporter. And this is one of the reasons that they're saying that he could have been, like, compromised. Is, like, working with the interest groups for the left, which the ACLU is one now. That's all I know. I don't know much more than that.
Huh.
I don't know.
Okay, I'll look into it.
I also might
Thank
be
you.
retarded, so always, you should put
Hey,
that in your
everything
notes.
is worth looking into.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just took
Especially
a note
my,
of it. Yeah.
my mental
Thank you.
situation, yeah. Especially my mental state. It's worth looking into. Yeah. Clint asked something really, really interesting. Is Clint still here? Liberty Lockdown. I hear him talking about what your red line is. He asked us all that. He asked us the same thing. What our red line is. What I want to know from Clint is, what do you mean? Like, what do you mean violent? Like, what the level at which you're willing to go like aggressive violence, or what do you when the red line is crossed? Like when Obama did the red line in Syria, he's like, oh, you're not going to cross it if you don't do it, and he never, like, if you cross it, what are you going to do? Does that mean attack? Does that mean defend? Does that mean secede? Because, like, you can't secede if you have an acre. How are you going to secede? So I don't know. Like, when someone asks me what my line is,
Outlast.
Yep.
you got to
That's how
endure, man. It's so Christian
Yeah.
to just endure.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I did have
That's
a
fine.
compliment up in the top here that Make Liberty Great Again said Jessica is just the best.
Oh, okay. Let me address this. The line at which you must physically fight. Yeah. I don't know, man. I mean, that's pretty like against the government as a collective. Like, which level of government do you mean against? Do you mean whoever is oppressing you? So the federal, or do you mean if it's your local sheriff? It's I don't know. It's a good question. It's just very situational.
Well, I always say that, I mean, the NAP ends at my fence.
Yeah.
That's just it. That's the end of it right there.
Period.
Period. If you get past that threshold,
but do you
you're done.
support Kyle Rittenhouse?
Yes.
So it doesn't then.
The NAP ended where somebody hit him in the head with a fucking skateboard. That's
Well,
fence
no,
enough
I'm
for
saying,
me.
do you support? But he went away from his fence.
He also didn't go up
The
there.
right to travel.
Yeah.
No. I'm not talking about Kyle. I'm talking about Ed J. Edgar. I'm saying that is a situation where you support a person getting away from their fence to protect a thing that is not their fence and is not even their property, and you back him. And I do too as well. I'm just saying that I don't agree with you that your nap ends at your fence because I mean I know you. And I don't agree with that. Because I agree that you care about other people's fences.
It's unabated within the fence.
Yeah, you know what I mean. What can you continue on that quest?
Well, go ahead.
I just said it's unabated within the fence. I understand that. Like you don't once they've declared war on you by entering by violating the sanctity of your home. I kind of understand just assuming that that they're trying to kill you.
Yes.
I mean, isn't your skull a fence for your brain? So if someone's hitting it, they're trying to break your fence.
Well, and to go along with that too, I mean, Kyle
Good
didn't
point.
go up to Kenosha to kill people that disagreed with him. He went up there to offer medical aid and clean up graffiti. He just got caught in a situation where somebody shot. He thought they were shooting at him, and he turned around and, with the best trigger discipline in the fucking
people that
world.
would disagree with that. There are stupid enough people that would disagree with that.
Oh yeah, I mean, to listen to some of the people on Twitter, all three of those people were on their knees with their hands bound behind their heads and blindfolded, and reading some of their tweets, I believe that that's what they believe.
My brother actually made a good compliment about Rittenhouse about when he was on his back and he was shooting. My brother said that he would have actually probably done a sweep.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I think that
And
third guy is only
appreciate the
alive
control.
because Kyle Rittenhouse had trigger discipline.
Yeah.
And he ought to actually be thanking that kid for having such a cool head in such a hot moment. Because I'd have done a half moon spray across that entire field of fire and wouldn't have thought twice about it. It was meant to be
I'm
funny.
just. I didn't mean like.
true.
I didn't mean to like hijack it with the Kyle talk. I'm just saying I disagree that I think that the it ends at your fence is a cliche that most people like. Even your most like libertarian type is like, has if you have a community.
Well, that's the red
like,
line.
It doesn't. Yeah.
What
Oh,
I
see.
volunteer to do otherwise is between me and the people of the community otherwise, but the absolute red line for me is the fence. They were asking about the red line, not necessarily what you volunteer for.
So, I mean, does that include if somebody
cool.
comes into your yard and you're telling them to leave? You're not going to kill that person just because they're being a dick and not leaving. So, like, even the fence itself does not present a red line as to where you would enact physical violence. So, really, like, I don't know. I don't know that the fence works. I think I agree that the fence doesn't work because there's too many times where somebody is in your fence. You're still not going to blow somebody away for just standing in your yard.
Could remove them.
I mean, presumably.
Could remove
You see
them
these,
corporeally.
These
Like very slowly push them with your vehicle.
Yeah, no.
Slowly.
Like, why
What's
don't you
the slowly
shoot him,
business?
shoot him in the leg? Have you seen these signs where it's like, due to the ammo shortage, I will not be able to provide a warning shot. Sorry, these are hard times.
Oh shit, that's an old meme. I've had that
is
sign
it?
up before, like 10 years
You've
ago.
had
I
that
had
sign.
that one.
You literally have that sign outside your door.
I don't anymore, but I used to.
Well, just before we go on to another topic, the NMP is a philosophy. Philosophies are ways of understanding our reality, but they're not end all be all cover alls.
Mm-hmm.
It's a good rule of thumb to try to operate by, but there are going to be there's always going to be that situation that somebody can construct that says, okay, what about this? What about that? So, I mean, we have to be prepared for the fact that the NAP doesn't cover every reality.
Right.
The NAP was invented by the Libertarian Party party, specifically to make them more palatable for the existing political players as not being, like trying to, violently take over the country or something like that. That was why it was created. It was an appeasement tool. Now, that said, obviously, it's probably a good idea not to create fights with people who aren't worthy of fighting or something like that. I've had ridiculous Twitter arguments with people who it's like if I fire my gun at you, it's not a violation until it hits you. If you drunk drive, it's not a violation until something bad happens. It's like,
I kind
it's
of
a little
agree with
cringe.
that
I kind of
second
agree
one,
with
though.
that.
I agree with the second
I
one.
think if you don't hurt
yeah.
anyone, you didn't hurt anyone.
Yeah.
But if you create a situation where it was very apt to happen, and you don't have control, if you're out of control in a way that can hurt someone else.
I personally don't think we should go down the libertarian autist.
Okay,
debating, because I'm saying
My
we
bad.
all could, we could
It's
go.
academically interesting, but people do get upset if it
Yes.
seems
Yeah.
like you're arguing for drunk driving.
I'm more pro Coliseum than even having this discussion at this point in history. I'm more like pro dueling than I am even like pro debate.
Nothing's illegal in New Jersey.
I'm
Dude.
so pro dueling.
Dude,
I think that
it's
it would
'cause
solve so many
Rationality is out the window. I mean, if we added, I don't know. It's just like there's no even such thing as society. There's no such thing as the Overton window. There's no such thing as debate. It's all just power and friends. Like if you can be friends, you can talk. But other than that, it's just a bunch of monkeys throwing shit and like people with guns and money, and it's gang warfare. And at least it's on Twitter right now. It's not going to be forever. I think so, at least.
Sometimes we throw shit, but sometimes we write music, and sometimes we paint.
Sometimes it's beautiful. Yeah, yeah. I gotta write more music. Was that a personal dig? Were you
No,
just kidding.
I'm trying to edify humanity.
That's right. I know you are. That's great. It's
All right,
based.
we got to catch up with the live chat here, you guys. Might be wrong asks if there's no government, who will keep the wildlife or who will kill the wildlife with roads rather.
Yeah, imagine caring
Good
about
point.
roads and being a libertarian.
Watching trains go by says a lot of QTubers have been promoting the Great Reset almost since they started. Not all. What's weird is a couple of them are suddenly anti-reset. I'm curious why.
The QBs?
The QTubers, I guess.
Oh,
I don't know that term, so
I can't keep up with all that,
Sorry.
man.
They're saying they're pro Great Reset.
they were and now they're
were.
not.
What?
Oh,
They were
interesting.
completely anti. These are the anti-globalists. Like, what? Really? I don't know.
Maybe guy out
I
there
don't
control.
know.
I'm for
That
it
whole
until I can't
thing.
control it.
Yeah, I don't know about the whole Q thing. The whole idea of like being a part of a movement where you don't even know like who the leader of the movement is. You don't even know who's like participating. It's just a bunch of people like throwing ideas around and trusting the plan. That seems really strange.
I agree.
Might be wrong is watching this while barefoot playing his acoustic. Hipster confirmed. Watching trains go by says they're working on home kits right now that you can grow human meat from cells taken from your mouth. Little meat patties made from you, LOL, as they eliminate meat. Yeah, we talked a bit about that. What do you think about that? Will you eat the people meat?
Bad enough that I nosh on my cuticle. So
I
will
would
not-
eat human if I had to survive.
Survive. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wouldn't eat like lab grown. I won't eat lab grown meat as it is, whether it's human or not. But if we're in an alive situation and you die before I do, I'm definitely going to cook you and eat you.
Guys gotta look
For sure.
into like the actual I don't know, there's a bunch of stories out there, but it's like I've listened to like 10 hours of podcasts on what happened with the Donner Party.
Donner,
Oh,
party
yeah.
of five.
They ahead of time drew straws for who's gonna die. Like it was just terrible story.
I'm not dead yet.
No, you're not. And then you're like, I don't know. Man, that's dark. Those are dark days. I don't know what I would do. I would probably
Yeah.
smile while doing it though. You gotta
There's actually that whole Donner Party thing. There's a really romantic story about a husband who did not give up going back up there for his wife and children 3 or 4
simp.
times.
I'm just kidding.
Well, no, but he
Oh,
almost died
Oh,
like 3 or 4
damn, yeah.
times trying to get up there and kept going back to get his wife and his kids. And I think that that's really romantic.
He would donate to girls on OnlyFans now. He would, I'm just kidding. He would just be a total simp. I'm just kidding.
They didn't even have floss back then either, right? So it'd be like stuck in there.
Ugh.
Oh, blessed. Wow.
oh,
Wow.
oh,
That was amazing.
that's awesome. Might Be Wrong has no confidence in the fake paper squares, so they have to create confidence in something else. I have confidence in Quest Fanning. There you go.
That was a great detail on cannibalism, dude. That was awesome.
Feeling a little like a little piece of my soul just left me.
About to cook something.
Aimless Gamer says Hitler had free camp. Come on, you know you want to say it, Steven.
No, I mean, I know what he's saying. That's what I brought
You
up.
know you want to quote Greta Thunberg to me.
Oh, man. Let's just keep going.
It's not a day. Well, this isn't daily ignoramus. I was going to say it's not a daily ignoramus unless Steven has said.
We can
How
talk
dare you,
like this
J.
on
Edgar?"
my channel anytime. In fact, I like it.
Um,
You read that one?
Steven Ignoramus says, "I am Antifa, the Wimixon who ran for Portland mayor."
Yeah, you know about that?
Tell us about it.
Well, she lost. I thought she was beating Ted Wheeler in the polls, but yeah, she said like I am Antifa in a interview. She had a dress that had like Mao and Che Guevara and stuff on it. She's a comic.
Cute.
Yeah.
That's so cute.
It's funny how I can just say that, put a period on the sentence, and then she can say cute, and then we can just move on because it's so normal. It's ridiculous. Like it's like, oh, just her moving like 20 years ago, like the goddamn commie scum. Like maybe 1995, but I don't know.
Nephilim says, "I survived a great flood. I'll surely survive a reset." I'm glad Nephilim's using that account because I've seen what he renamed his other account.
What was it again?
Nephilim Ninja says, "I
No,
survived
what
a
was
great."
the one he? What was he?
I'm not saying it on the air.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Ooh.
He's probably going to show up in the comments section now because of that.
Oh.
I probably just challenged him to do that. Might Be Wrong says Brian Kemp is a joke, and Steven replied back to that, the ACLU got to Kemp, and we expanded that on a little bit. Do you want to expand on that any more before we move on?
I don't have anything more. I just have heard smarter people than me. I have some stuff I can link you guys at some point where like I watched like a 4-hour stream and a 2-hour stream of them going through the states that were in play or whatever, and that's just one of the things they mentioned is the Stacey Abrams race, which was big at the time, being kind of like
She still hasn't conceded, has she?
dude, unreal. How do these clowns stay at the top of? I don't know.
Did you see that meme with a picture of her in profile and the shape of the state of Georgia?
No.
So
No.
the little,
She looks like Georgia. Biden looks like Idaho, sniffing. Have
Yeah.
you seen that one? Yeah.
yeah.
I don't know. That's all I know. That's it. I'm good at gossip, but I'm not your deep dive guy.
Might Be Wrong says, "I can't work remotely, but thankfully people always need tradesmen." And yeah, I mean, everybody should pick up and learn a trade at some point too,
Yeah.
even if they don't use it all the time. But it makes a good backup plan. I mean, I just
Can we,
came out and said,
can we go back after this one? Can we go back to treating things that aren't the plague like they're not the plague? Because otherwise, we're gonna have to stop pretty frequently as far as being able to go about our business. Lockdowns and all.
Yeah, we're a bunch. We've set the precedent for being like the most sensitive, soft culture of all time. And now,
It's so sad.
yeah,
Why is it so
So
global too? Like you think that more countries would be doing okay with? I mean, like Sweden said, "Yeah, be safe, bye." That was it.
Yeah,
Except that they actually had resources going to the nursing homes, just like Florida did. To actually look for the vulnerable population and take care of the vulnerable population instead of fucking the rest of the population over.
yeah. The mainstream, mainstream like globalist like Coca-Cola, Nike culture has just made a bunch of homos out of us all. It's just I don't know. It's just like a bunch of weak bitches in government and in like it's all. I mean, look, the dudes or whoever that still play in the dirt, like the third world countries have it better at this point because they know how to play in the dirt. They know how to build a house from scratch. They know how to like garden their own stuff. But like, the mainstream Western cultures are just a bunch of bitches. Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's true. People don't know how to cook anymore. People don't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That really freaks me out. Is that people can't like make bread? You have to go buy. Like it's just so
Yeah.
strange how far
I
we've.
can't.
Everybody knows how to do sourdough now. So that's the
Yeah, what is that, man? Do you ladies do sourdough bread?
I don't do sourdough. I just do regular. But I have a friend who makes sourdough. It's basically just fermenting a starter and then making bread from there.
I'm actually going to make
Steven,
bread as soon as we're
Steven,
done
who
with this.
identified
So.
their gender?
Who did?
Steven, who identified their gender?
In history?
No, I just.
Right?
Did,
You addressed
yeah,
the
did you
lady.
just
So
assume their
lost.
genders?
I'm like the
What the
first one.
shit?
I'm like God, Yahweh. Like what? Like what? Adam and Eve. Like what are you talking about?
More like Adam
the
and
beginning.
Steve.
Oh,
Yeah,
Watching
I wouldn't have
trains go
eaten
by.
apple. Sorry, keep going.
Watching trains go by says if people. I don't understand where he was going with this, but he says if people quit drinking, they could cut down on consumption of chicken by 50% and stop smoking pot, 2 less meals, and junk food a day. The second one I understand. I don't understand the connection between drinking and chicken.
I smoke
I-
pot. I don't
Grease.
eat any junk
Grease.
food.
Yeah,
you need the grease to sell things.
Oh.
he was describing the events outside of a Popeyes chicken.
Ah,
On the-
I like Popeye's chicken.
We need more of that on the ground reporting. You know.
I'm risking my life for the cause, yo. I'm here from a Popeyes, dude. They're punching each other. Yeah.
Watching trains go by says the number one prepper plan is a community of people, healthcare, and food prep growing defense. Then you deal with the supply and sustainable planning.
I have a thing to say on that, if you don't mind.
Go ahead.
People so associate community and communism. So when you try to have a conversation about community in Liberty Twitter, like people are so reactionary. But community is actually really important. And that comes in a voluntary aspect. Voluntarily knowing your neighbors, voluntarily feeding the people in your community who need it. Like all of the things that we associate with socialism, like feeding the hungry, taking care of the sick and elderly, those are things that we're commanded to do by our Christian ethic or just, by virtue of living in a Judeo-Christian society. And those things have to come from us voluntarily. We have to feed the poor. We have to go and take ourselves to do that, not rely on this sort of like giant system that we all buy into so that I don't have to put any work into actually going and feeding my community. And so,
Voluntary association.
I'm sorry?
Voluntary association.
Voluntary association.
That's an
exactly.
actual community.
It's much better for us to work within our local environments to improve the state of the people who are hungry around us, hungry, needing a roof, whatever it may be. Socks and toiletries are the most needed items in homeless shelters, and lots of homeless shelters now have Amazon wish lists. So if you want to make a difference in the world, start by sending someone some socks. And a sock in a winter street is nearest to God to a person who's freezing. So, you can be that socialistic type of change that you want to see. That can come from you voluntarily and affect people more directly than
that's
lining
why-
the pockets of a politician will.
Yeah, that's why the politicians in them are so full of shit because they don't really do it. I mean, some of them do, but it's just it gets kind of hard to believe when even if someone does act in a charitable way, like the climate change, for instance, the climate change people that fly around on public jets, or in private jets, that's the most
John
cliche way
Kerry.
of talking about it, But it's like, you're so right. It just starts with we have to do it ourselves, or it's not going to happen. That's been every project in human history of all time, and it's like, you have to.
I think that a lot of people get confused with this whole society versus government thing. That I think that a lot of the time, we know the classic thing of you don't want the government to do it, therefore you don't want it to be done, right? But if you look at how the U.S. has become a more wealthy society over the years, and you look at how inefficient government is, and you also look at how government has supplanted what's called voluntary organizations, right? Think about how much more we would be doing for the poor if government weren't literally choking out the avenues that had previously been helping them.
I will never forget watching the police arrest a 90-year-old pastor for bringing pizzas to homeless people.
What?
Like he
What?
is
Oh, because
literally,
it wasn't in the right kitchen or something.
well, whatever their reasons are, they're basically getting in the way of this man freely practicing his religion, which as Christians, we're commanded to do these, we have a responsibility to our community. So, as far as I can see, the government is actually violating the First Amendment rights of Christians by preventing them from feeding the hungry. And I think that that's something that maybe needs to come up in a court at some point. But
Was that in Houston? But by the way, I remember
I
there
thought
was
it
a
was Florida, but
Okay.
it was one of the warm places, so it could have been Houston.
Yeah.
We do, speaking of Florida, we have a Fagot sighting in here.
Get him.
Yama Fagot says there are always going to be stupid people and there will always be failures and they're not necessarily mutually inclusive. Discuss.
No, very smart people fail. Failure is how you get good at things. You have to suck at anything you want to get good at. You have to suck at it and you have to fail at it. Otherwise, you're not going to learn how to get better. So the idea that only stupid people fail is quite a misnomer. You should be willing to fail, embrace failure, and think, oh, I'm learning. How lucky I am for failure. Which I know sounds like a Jordan Peterson speech.
No, that's so true. If you know anything about building a skill, that's true. It's like I think like actual failure that's not actual failure. Like the actual failure is not admitting that you suck at it and like putting the blame on someone else. Like the real failure is putting the blame on someone else. That's why it's like I do believe like letting them ultimately fail is like ending, like, I'm sorry, it's like ending their own life because they wouldn't do what it takes to sustain their own life is a better alternative than continuously putting it on government, and which there's no such thing as government. There's just the people that it taxes, like there's the structure, but it's a better alternative. Is letting them literally starve is a better alternative than keeping the bloat and like the involuntary interactions and all the craziness go on. That's real failure. I mean, what you're calling failure is just what it looks like at first to the person that quits or hasn't learned a skill. Like from the outside, they see you messing up all the time, but then a year later, if you haven't quit, you've gotten really good. But real failure is blaming someone else.
You learn what it is that you did right. You learn what it is you did wrong. You keep what you did right, and you try to fix what you did wrong. And that you're not going to get that lesson if you did okay and got by. If you fail, you have some reckoning to do, and then you improve.
Yeah, I see failure like I think of failure as quitting. Like I think that's ultimate failure is like trying something and then you don't get it the way you want it the first time, so then you just quit. I think that's like ultimate failure. And when Stephen was talking about failure, he was like air guitaring, and I think that's a really I think music is such a good parallel for looking at how life works, because when you first pick up like a guitar or start playing piano or whatever, you suck, like you're just terrible and it sounds bad. But after so many times of failing and failing, then you kind of just it sounds like a song you want to play. And that's like a metaphor for business. That's everything.
Mm-hmm.
And think about how your fingers hurt when you first play guitar because you have not built up
so
talent.
bad.
And it's enough to make a person quit. You think, God, this is a painful kind of thing. But the experienced player will have, hard calluses on the end of their fingers to show that they've been through that pain.
Well, according to Steven, I still suck at playing guitar because I never learned how to play bar chords.
Gotta learn bar chords, bro. I
was a
come on.
You
bassist
have to learn.
first.
Yeah.
Give me some break. I'm more of a
Said
finger
every
picker than
excuse-making
anything.
bass player who
Let-
learned guitar of all time.
Let's just switch to Stephen giving us a lesson.
Right now?
Yeah.
Train says it doesn't matter if America was one gigantic state, 50 independents, or 10 separate countries. Corruption is what got us here, not the American model.
Turning from God.
Yeah.
There's a lot of truth to that. And I think it's true that it wouldn't go away if we had 50 separate countries. There would be corruption within those separate countries, but we would have a lot. Each of the individuals in those states, I think, would have more of an opportunity to deal with the corruption of that state than they would huge federal system that's got this entire military and media and culture built up behind it. I'm kind of reminded of that line from The Patriot where he was like, I'm trading one tyrant for 300 tyrants.
3,000 miles away.
Why is that better? And I think that this is a similar saying, and there's truth to that. It's like, what do you think is most manageable for the most amount of people to have the most freedom? And there are maybe no perfect solutions for that. Even in terms of like out and out open anarchy, there's no kind of state, not even any kind of form of government or voluntary government. People would lose out in that situation too. There wouldn't be ultimate freedom for a lot of people because a lot of people would be dead. So there are a lot of imperfect solutions and imperfect ideas that we can maybe get creative with and just try different things than what we're trying now. I'm not saying any of them would be perfect. I'm saying that we have the opportunity to be creative.
Unfortunately, I think in the chat we just saw the end of Might Be Wrong's admin status over on Steven's channel. Might Be Wrong says people with power will always be corrupt, and Steven says that's why I'm taking your wrench soon. Might Be Wrong.
I'll give it back.
Drains has got a lot to say about corruption here, but Sergeant Peterson actually has a question specifically for the chat, and he says, question for the panel. Isn't the Great Reset just the New World Order, as Bush spoke about that in the early 90s? And then he said Bush Sr. Who cares? They're one of the fucking same.
Not the wrestling one.
No, I would say it's like a step. I'd say it's like one of the steps to a new world order. I think that there's a lot more that goes into a new world order, like centralized government, and I don't think the Great Reset necessarily includes that type of government, but I think it's like additional factors.
I think it's all
there's
the same stuff under a different name.
Yeah.
I think
there's a lot of different elites. It's like they don't like each other either,
Competing elites.
Yeah, I mean it's like the elites of the CCP in China probably
Right.
don't like the EU.
Yeah.
Like they probably hate each other. So it's all just real estate and resources, same as it ever was.
Mm-hmm.
One thing I was thinking about with the whole corruption issue, and now that you're saying, like kind of the real estate and resources, kind of like almost like a territorial thing. One thing that corruption and similar things have an effect on things is it's not like imagine if a government official is just like, you need to give me a bribe, right? Now, the net sum of what that does to a government's economy, a country's economy, right, is not that bribe. It's orders of magnitude worse. It's not being able to trust people. I'm sorry to come back to trust again, but like seriously, if you think that your work is going to be taken from you, if you're not sure about your status and about whether the rule of law is going to protect your own personal property or your ability to create,
Mm-hmm.
then you are going to be closed off and you are not going to be as productive.
Yeah. High trust societies build great things. And low trust societies, like, yeah, they eat each other and burn everything down and and terror, So
Have you guys listened to that Fall of Civilizations podcast?
I think we're watching it right now. It's on Twitter right now.
Yeah.
Well, yeah,
Yeah,
I
I've
mean,
heard of it.
so what I find interesting about that podcast is someone earlier had said that globalization is not been done before. And I'm thinking about the Bronze Age collapse and how, although it was maybe like a compartmentalized area that we wouldn't consider like the whole round globe, but basically the whole of the civilized world at that time was very globalized.
Yeah.
For in the way that we would mean it, very much so. To just all the logistical and supply chains were connected. All of the military forces relied on allyhoods between all of these countries. And when one fell, they all sort of collapsed. And so I think we have seen globalization before, and we have seen the effect of that interconnectedness being disrupted, and it's fragile, and it doesn't take very much. But you know, we had the late Bronze Age collapse, and humanity didn't end. You know, new forms of empires rose, and I think this is a cyclical thing, or like a wave, where civilizations rise and then they fall and then they rise and then they fall. And so once we build ourselves up too big, we sort of collapse under our own weight, and then things are cleared away and given opportunity for, you know, new power structures to rise. But I think even if we were to eliminate the power structures that exist now, it would only be a matter of time before new power structures that very much resemble the ones we have now rose in their place. Because there's a natural human tendency to follow behind leaders, to want to be led. There's safety in numbers. There's all kinds of reasons for why we do this thing, but it's natural. It's almost as natural as the way that wolves operate in packs, is the way that we build our civilizations and the way that we crumble them.
I think that there's a real opportunity in how interconnected our communication is now. That it's at such a level that, you know, we can become more independent in terms of like how we do things on the ground, and how we become a little bit more decentralized, or we, you know, maybe I go up to whole 10% of my food coming in from my front porch instead of, you know, from the grocery store or whatever, or I'm more localized. We have the opportunity, because of our advanced communication, to adjust just how much we depend on each other, and make it really work for us in ways that we can decentralize power organically.
That's awesome.
All right, I've got the where is it? I got a little bit of a back and forth here. I want you guys to weigh in on. Sergeant Peterson says a dead perp is better than a wounded perp that could get a lawyer. To which Post Jazz replies, "Dead men tell no tales and hire no legal consult." And Major Victory finished it off and says, "But they can still vote Democrat." Discuss.
I don't know. Go ahead, Stephen.
I mean, I'm just saying, like, I'm pro like private property, so I think they should, like, anyone that's threatening your life and livelihood or whatever, or just breaking in, you should be able to just like kill them, no questions asked. You know, like that should be completely legal. But do you want me to comment on the voting, or like, of course, dead people vote? Like, what do you mean? This voting cycle's I mean, of course they cheated. You know, of course there's dead people. I don't really care all that much, because it's never
I like
been
what
that
Razorfist
legit.
had to say about that. The only people closer to the fucking grave than Joe Biden himself are his voters.
Yeah, faker votes.
An injured animal is the most dangerous thing in the world. So I would say don't intentionally injure someone instead of killing them.
One of the things that my dad always told me during these discussions of what one might do in like a home invasion situation is you always leave them a retreat. Because if you corner someone or you back someone against a wall that they can't get out of, they become exponentially more dangerous than they were before. So get out if you can. Choose to get out before you fight. And if you can't get out, leave them a way to get out.
If one of my dogs injures someone, I'm afraid I can't let my dog get put down. So might have to take care of that.
I would choose my dog over most everyone on the planet, so be aware of that.
Let's see. I got, where the fuck was it? There it is. Post Jazz says, only hike in the winter with Armenians. You can just shave them and make sweaters. No skin suits required.
Amazing. That was awesome. Thank you, Post Jazz. I've had the pleasure of meeting Post Jazz in person. He's more funny. He's funnier than that in person. That was amazing.
Train says, every drunk I've ever known grabbed chicken on the way home. Steven got it. You must not be drinking much in Wisconsin, because we always got cheese curds on the way home.
You get Waffle House if
Nice
you
and
live in
greasy.
Georgia.
Nice and greasy, see?
I think that I don't remember who chasing. I think I sense a city dweller.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've only been to Georgia once, and they rained me out the whole goddamn time I was there. You were there, Steven.
We were. I was.
Yeah.
It rained.
Was that on your way to Florida or what?
Wow.
Yeah, when we went to Florida, both
I think I
directions. It
blacked
just
out most of that car ride.
There was a hurricane coming through.
yeah, there was a hurricane coming through, but yeah, it's just torrential downpour
Hurricane
all the way
Edgar.
through. Both directions, and then once we got to Florida, the sun was shining.
Well, at least it lived up to its name.
Yamafago says Steven is a bar court supremacist.
Yep.
Ron Helton showed up. This will get some very interesting conversation coming up in here with the AOC sticker.
I said after that, there will always be lower classes in society. Those that don't learn bar chords are a classic example.
It's true.
They're subhuman. Yes.
Talking about Koinonism, that's too statist for my taste. I agree with John on that one.
Dang, dude. I like that system.
Aimless says feds can't troll. We've got an Instagram link here, which I'm not going to open on this.
Speaking of trolls,
No, that's
any
me.
any
That's
unfriendlies in
that's
there?
me putting. Wow. Okay, gotcha.
Anyone unfriendly in there?
No,
Let's
we're
see.
all-
Let's see if there's anybody to fight.
Everyone's friendly in here. Everyone's a
Yeah.
regular in here.
Yeah. All right, and that is it. And we are caught up for this stream. So I want to thank everybody for coming in and hanging out with us. Before we get out of here, I want to go clockwise, starting with Steven, and let everybody plug their stuff, and then we'll head on out of here. So, Steven, plug yourself.
Sweet. Well, this is awesome coming on. I'm definitely down to do more panels like this. Really cool to talk to people and stuff. But yeah, I stream all the time. Most of you guys know me. But 10 a.m. Eastern time, weekdays with my daily ignoramus thing, couple interviews a week and some music. And I don't know. You'll see me.
And freedomscoop.com, by the way.
Oh, yeah, and freedomscoop.com. That's right. Check out Jay Edgar. Chief Operating Officer of freedomscoop.com, Jay Edgar. Wearing a tie, by the way. What made you dress up, dude?
I don't know.
You look spiffy.
You look fantastic.
Yeah.
I looked at my suit when I was deciding what I wanted to wear for the stream. I said, I'm going to wear that.
Looking sharp. Looking
Angela,
for love.
plug your stuff.
Sorry.
Okay, well, thanks for having me on. It was really fun going back and forth with everyone. I am the writer and editor at thenomanzone.com, and it's just like an investigative journalism site where I post all of my work.
That is linked in the description. Steven's channel is linked in the description too, by the way.
If you want something cool, check out Angela's Instagram stories. I really like looking at yours because you have you update
Oh, really?
everybody. Yeah, I love your Instagram. So it's it's an actual
Really? Oh,
good
wow.
Instagram news source. Yeah, I really like it.
Thank you.
Yes.
Miss Green, plug your
Oh,
stuff.
okay. So I'm the Libertarian Kitchen Witch. I have a blog, and I am on YouTube as well. The Jessica Green Show, which kind of is like a sister program to that. Do a lot of food history, recipes, prepping, that kind of thing. Occasionally, we'll also drop in my political 2 cents. But if you're interested in self-sufficiency or agorism, come check out my blog. And then also I do the 100 Nights of Horror horror movie challenge, which ended October 31st, but you can always join for next year's challenge. And I'm doing Soup Club. So if you like soup, join Soup Club.
How far did you get in that? I was going to ask you that, by the way.
Oh, it's not, or do you mean the horror movie thing?
The horror movie thing, yeah.
Yeah, I got 37, which is not my best number. My best number was 57. So weird that it ended on 7. But yeah, I got 37 this year. It's hard to do. You're essentially watching people get murdered every night for 100 nights in a row. And you eventually are like, I don't feel like that tonight.
Mr. Fanning, plug your stuff.
Well, I'm on Twitter at Quest Fanning. Spelled, pretty straightforward. I like to share a lot of content regarding libertarian stuff. I like to talk about opportunity and about unintended consequences and stuff like that. But a lot of what I'm interested in is about homeschooling, and I actually intend to put out a little bit of my own content there soon. But I think that I think that's enough.
All right, and that is going to be it for us today. We are going to head on out of here. So thanks everybody who came by and hung out with us. I will be back here in the morning with Contemporary on Monday morning. Looking forward to that and seeing what kind of stupid shit the government has done over the past 3 days. It's always interesting to come back and look and see what's happening on a weekend. So come and hang out with me for that. It's going to be a lot of fun, and hang out in the live chat, and we'll get your name read at the end of the week for things. Otherwise, we'll be back here on Monday for the RedNet show as well. And always go over and check out freedomscoop.com for a lot more great content like Mr. Ignoramus, myself, The Generational Gap, The Freckles and Brit Show, and The R-Rated Conservative, and The Breakdown with Birkenhoff. Come and check us out, pick up some of our swag, and help us support great creators. This has been Across the Board. So, for Stephen Ignoramus, Angela Ramirez, Jessica Green, and Quest Fanning, my name is Jay Edgar saying good night. Good night.